Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Knowledge Hub sessions. Now, already today we've had a perspective from a leading airport company and from a panel of travel retailers, and I'm delighted to say we're going to round out our opening day with the voice of that all-important third party in the industry trinity, the brand owner. And I'm joined by senior figures at three leading brand or brand representative companies across three of the traditional core categories of the business: confectionery, beauty, and wines and spirits. We have Hershey International Chief Commercial Officer William Pritchett, who leads $1 billion plus business unit covering all Hershey markets outside the US, as well as Hershey World Travel Retail. We're joined also by Essence Corp Vice President Sales, Travel Retail North and South America, Antoine Bona, and Vice President Sales Caribbean, Guillaume Bona, who represent the Miami-based family company that manages distribution of fragrances and cosmetics for many leading brands. And we welcome Bacardi Global Travel Retail Global Head of Marketing, Ignacio Vasquez, representing, of course, one of the region's and world's great brand names in wines and spirits. Ignacio has a global role today, but previously headed marketing for Latin America and the Caribbean. So this is a regional market he knows very well indeed. So welcome all. Now, as with other sessions, we encourage you, the viewers and the listeners, to get involved. So please make your comments or ask your questions via our Q&A button on the page, lower down the page, and we'll aim to tackle those a bit later in the conversation. So we asked our speakers today to set the scene with some introductory remarks and their opening thoughts on our theme of recovery. And we'll begin that with a short video from William, followed by an introductory conversation that I had with Antoine and Guillaume, and then we'll talk to Ignacio when we get into our live Q&A. So first we're going to hear from William about the Hershey International experience and about how assortment, experience, and Omni Channel will help drive the recovery. So can we play the video from Hershey International, please?
Hi, I'm William Pritchett, and I'm Chief Commercial Officer of Hershey International, and it's my privilege to be speaking to you today at Summit of the Americas. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about the Hershey Company itself, and then how we're thinking about the travel retail channel recovery going forward. So I'm just going to share my slides here. So whenever I travel around the world, at least when I was traveling, when I say I work for the Hershey Company, people get a smile on their face, and they almost always share a special moment that Hershey played in their lives. Really, the core of who we are is a consumer-centric company who invests in our iconic brands, builds strong partnerships with our retail customers, and develops innovative solutions to create value in a fast evolving marketplace. Now, making moments of goodness is our North Star as we deliver our business commitments, but also build a sustainable future and create a compelling workplace for our employees. This really harkens back to our founder, Milton Hershey, who was driven by a sense of community and helping children in need. And this spirit is really ingrained in our culture. So he gave away, prior to his death, his entire fortune to create a school that's today known as the Milton Hershey School. And so our employees come to work each and every day with a sense of purpose fostered by his values and his legacy. Now, sustainability plays a key role in that purpose. And at Hershey, we continue to accelerate our environmental, social, and governance agenda. And it's a key priority for the company and a focus for how we operate our businesses around the world. We are focused on, among other things, improving childhood nutrition, investing in energy efficiency, developing sustainable packaging solutions, curtailing deforestation, and ending forced and child labor. In fact, just last month, we announced new commitments to advance our environmental progress and contribute to global climate action, setting ambitious goals to reduce our carbon footprint going forward. Now, we're fortunate to have a portfolio of beloved brands ranging from sweet indulgence, where we have the bulk of our portfolio, but also to savory and better for you. And those are occasions we think give us the opportunity to capture more of the consumer's snacking occasions, like we did with our acquisition of Skinny Pop. We have very strong leadership positions in the US, and we're growing our strength internationally. So in the US, we're number one in the confectionery category and within the subsegments of chocolate and mints. Our baking and grocery portfolio has performed extremely well during COVID as consumers spend more time at home cocooning and eating more of their meals at home. So we're number one in syrup as well as in baking powder there. And then again, with our acquisition of Skinny Pop, we've catapulted to number two in the ready-to-eat popcorn segment, another segment that's seen really strong growth during the pandemic. Now, as we think about the world travel retail channel, world travel is an extremely important part of our business at Hershey. And we've only just recently integrated it into our international business unit. And we're going to maintain it standalone from an operating perspective, given the uniqueness of the channel. But we believe this integration with international is really going to give us revenue synergies as we think about insight sharing, capability sharing, coordinated innovation, optimization of sourcing across our global supply chain network. We just see a lot of opportunity for growth there. And as we think about recovery, we see really three keys to the recovery. And these are assortment, experience, and Omni Channel. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time on each of these three shortly. But then we're optimistic if we execute efficiently, we're going to see a recovery to 2019 levels in the next 3 to 4 years. So beginning with assortment, we remain confident that consumers are going to continue to select confection and chocolate post-pandemic. So you can see here the results of a survey that we performed asking, in which categories will your behavior not change? And you can see chocolate appearing in the top three. However, what will change are the occasions for which consumers are choosing confectionery and chocolate. You can see here self-consumption and gifting, those two occasions strong and growing, while the sharing occasion really declines. And you can understand why, given our limited ability to interact with each other during the pandemic. Now turning to experiences. Experiences are critically important for consumers in confectionery. And we see these needing to be different, but not needing to be diminished, right? So you look at the top right here in terms of purchasing motivators. I mean, you can see one theme that really comes across is safety. Consumers are telling us that safety is paramount when it comes to engaging in the channel. Now, that can be anything from face masks to hand sanitizer to social distancing. And what that means is we must work together, ourselves and our retail partners, to ensure the consumer feels safe, but also offer those in-store experiences such as sampling and staff interaction with perfection. So it's vital that we, for example, in sampling, we follow the safety protocols, and these are visible to the consumer. But having said that, the travel retail consumer is still searching both for price competitiveness, and also exclusivity. So these exclusives really deliver a sense of place that are hard to replicate in the domestic channel. So at Hershey's, we're going to continue to lead the category with both experiences and products that meet these customer needs. Now, Omni Channel is a trend that has accelerated during COVID, as I'm sure many of you can personally attest. As we looked at our survey, almost over a third, so 38% of shoppers willing to shop or pre-order online and collect their items upon boarding or arrival, right? Almost 2/3, or 64%, are going to spend less time in the airport before departing. And you can see a fairly small minority considering not visiting the duty-free channel at all. And so we really have to think as brands and as retailers, how do we respond to this? How do we give the consumer that experience, that convenience, that safety, as we think about the online channel? Now, our core category strategy principles will, of course, remain highly relevant during the recovery. So ease of shop, we have to be found, whether that's on the shelf or online. Unlocking occasions, as I mentioned before, we need a portfolio that responds to the key occasions of gifting and self-consumption snacking with our innovation, with our assortment, and how we show up on shelf. Maximizing impulse. So confectionery is a highly impulsive category. And there's opportunity for things like second facings, whether that's at checkouts and queues, et cetera, to give the consumer an impulsive opportunity to increase their basket spend. And then lastly, captivating shoppers. This goes back to experiences like I mentioned with sampling, brand immersion, and then with enhanced content online. Now, with change comes opportunity, and we really believe there's opportunity for greater partnership between Hershey and our retail partners. One good example of this partnership is in data sharing. And so, as I think is obvious, for all the right reasons, we want to keep our proprietary data closely guarded. But where there's opportunities, for brands and retailers to share data, we believe this can generate better consumer and shopper insights to enable stronger growth in the channel. And then, as I mentioned, Omni Channel is here to stay. We need to think about how we capture consumers however they shop, whether it's in-store with experiences or online via their mobile devices. Now, here's one example of what we can do when we partner together. This is a great pop-up promotional space at New York's JFK International Airport. And this included an exclusive lineup of Hershey confectionery and branded non-confectionery products only found at this airport and in our Times Square Chocolate World store. You can see here some experiential elements like this mascot Miss Kiss, where consumers were actually encouraged to take pictures and post it on social media. Now, this pop-up space was originally scheduled to last only a month, but was so successful that it's been going for the last 6 months. And this is it's a great example of what we can do to give the consumer the experiences that they're asking for, even during the time of the pandemic. So I want to close with a video that I think says a lot about the Hershey Company, especially during this pandemic. So I'll just try to play this.
Go ahead and eat it.
Now, I just wanted to thank you again for inviting me here to speak today. And I just want to say on behalf of myself, our entire World Travel Retail team, as well as the entire Hershey Company, we look forward to the partnership going forward to build a very strong recovery of this channel. Thank you.
Thanks so much, William. In the live session shortly, we'll come back to some of those key themes you addressed, in particular the new experience and consumer expectations of the journey, and of course where confectionery and other categories can play a role in recovery. Now we'll turn to Essence Corp and to how the beauty sector in America's travel retail has been affected and indeed reacted to crisis. We have an introductory conversation that I had recently with Antoine and Guillaume. So can we play that, please? Greetings, Antoine and Guillaume, and many thanks for taking part in this session at the Summit of the Americas about the future for brands in the travel retail channel. Can you tell us a little bit about Essence Corp for those viewers who might be a little unfamiliar with who you are and what you do?
Sure. So maybe I'll take this one and we'll just ping pong back and forth. So Dermot, thanks. Nice seeing you, and thank you for the opportunity. So Essence Corp is a third generation family business. It was founded by Guillaume and I's grandfather, started in Paris. But today we are a master distributor of fine fragrances and cosmetics for the travel retail of the Americas, duty-free territories, and the Caribbean. We have our own logistics center here based in Miami, and we source all the travel retail channels throughout the Americas, such as the Caribbean, in-flights, airports, cruise ships, free zones, and borders.
Very good. And so with that breadth of channels that you're working through, clearly COVID-19 over the last 12 months has had an impact. Can you maybe outline just how deep an impact it's had in your business and of course, the wider business and category in the region?
Sure. Of course, I mean, we were all impacted by COVID, all of us, from operator, distributor, brands, and retailer. It's obvious we were all on the same boat. Luckily for us, we're not only a travel retail / airports distributor. Airports and cruise ships are probably the segment that are the most impacted. But luckily, and thanks God, the Caribbean, for example, did pretty good compared to the situation. The locals consume locally. The locals are used to travel to the US, to the UK, and they did not travel during the COVID, and they consume locally. The border business is an important part of our business as well, and was less impacted to cruise ships. So, you know, overall, obviously, we can communicate to you that we were hit by probably -35 compared to previous year, which is a big hit, but which is better than the trend.
Yeah, very much so. And of course, there's a lot worse figures than that out there in the industry. And I suppose, given the impact of the crisis, there's some things that obviously are out of the control of every business in this industry. But how have you reacted, adapted, pivoted overall? And also, how have you done that with some of your partners out there in the business?
Yeah, so I mean, last year we definitely felt an impact. We did do some downsizing in our company. Today we're a company of 64, and we did let go of some headcount. You know, our offices are currently open for those who want to come in for specific meetings, but obviously nobody's using the office, and we're working remotely. So that was the first pivot, to go to remote. Then we did some small downsizing, but overall, you know, we've been able to keep the majority of the team. We've actually been quite busy. We've had to, you know, we worked very closely with our customers. We contacted all our customers right away, and we started just kind of working on their current inventories. You know, I mean, this was an opportunity to maybe clean up some inventory, take a look at what's not working, mark it down, because what we're seeing is that, you know, during economic crisis, is that people are looking at promotional sales. So that was a way to kind of look into, take a deep dive into the assortments, the current inventory of our partners, offer some promotions to generate some sell out, and eventually generate some sell in, but to be able to react to the market's needs for promotional sales.
Yeah, one thing we've heard from many retailers across categories is as those consumers are coming back, and we certainly saw it in Europe, for instance, last summer, people were very much focused, and this was also the direction of promotions on best-selling SKUs per brand and line. And is that something that you've seen focused on a rationalization of the overall offer among many retailers that you've been working with?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're seeing is that the consumer is looking for your best seller, you know, your top 15, top 10 brands, the best selling SKUs, and maybe a promotional reference within those brands. So there's some hot price points at $29.99, $39.99, or $49.99, and different retailers are offering this program. So what we're seeing is value promotions working, but also your classic bestsellers among the top 20 brands. We have seen a pivot in the beauty industry from makeup to cosmetics back to fragrances, which wasn't the trend a couple of years ago. So obviously makeup's been severely impacted with less people going out, more confinements, mask wearing. Skincare has been impacted as well, as it's difficult to sample and test the product. Whereas fragrances, there's been almost very limited testing requirements on it. So if consumers are able to spray their fragrances, or the VA is able to spray their fragrances, they're able to smell it. And we're seeing a comeback to fragrances within the stores, and we're seeing the retailers focus back on fragrances.
Right. Okay. I suppose just looking ahead and how you might see recovery taking shape, perhaps Guillaume, what dynamics do you think are going to drive the business going forward in the future as this recovery hopefully gains momentum?
I mean, all of us just spent 1 full year shopping online on Amazon. Amazon did an amazing year during COVID, double-digit growth. You know, by shopping on Amazon, you become more knowledgeable of the product, you read reviews, you know exactly what you want. So I'm expecting consumer to go back to traveling and back to the travel retail with the same state of mind. But, you know, I believe people are anxious to travel again, to consume, to touch products. And I'm positive for the long term. You know, today there are only 10% people that receive the vaccine in the US, so it's still small, but it's growing. And on the long term, I believe that I'm hoping that by the end of summer, people will be back on the road and consume again. I'm positive.
You mentioned at the beginning of that reply about Amazon. What shape is your own digital agenda taking now, and how do you think the travel retail industry needs to evolve in that direction as well? We've heard a lot from retailers about them driving their own digitalization agenda, but how should that take shape, and how are you at Essence Corp working in that direction yourselves?
We have worked with our retailers throughout the last year, helping them to develop not only their online platform, but also curbside. Many Caribbean retailers were proactive during the pandemic in Aruba, Curaçao, many islands where you have a high population. We help them to sample, to drive sampling through consumer. The idea of an online platform is not only to sell online, but to drive traffic to the store. And we've been very, very proactive with our retailers, help them to develop. We do not have our own online platform simply because we're distributing fragrance and cosmetics to our retailers, and we wouldn't like to compete with them.
Very good. And just looking at the opportunity for brand building in travel retail, do you view it in the same way as you did before? What's changed, if anything, and does that affect perhaps your brand partners and your own appetite to invest, do you think, in the channel?
No, I mean, so in terms of brand building, just going back to digital has been a huge focus, whether it's, you know, the social media accounts of our retailers, or doing, you know, Instagram lives, or having influencers speak about our brands. So there's a digital approach to brand building now within travel retail. And we can see that our retailers are becoming more digitally savvy. We've been able to support them along the way. In terms of brand building in the future, I mean, we could see some retailers a little bit reluctant to do this right now, but we know that's just a short-term strategy. I mean, we know consumers are going to want innovation when they go into a store. So I think that will be back. Then, in terms of category management, I mean, maybe that's something that they're going to reshuffle. You know, I mean, obviously the beauty is very classic. You have a smaller footprint for fragrances. You have a big footprint for cosmetics and makeup. But maybe there's going to be new categories within beauty, such as home or bath and body or sanitizers. Or, you know, edible beauty that's gonna be a focus in the future. But right now, you see retailers really focusing on what they have. You see them more focused on fragrances, as they know that's what's selling out right now. And you see them themselves kind of looking at their assortments and kind of, you know, maybe delisting brands and coming up with a new strategy for the future. But for beauty, I think fragrance is definitely going to be a main focus from here on end, because obviously fragrances have been able to maintain sales, I think, better than most categories during this pandemic. But also there'll be space for newer categories, specific brands that drive innovation through hero SKUs or maybe more bath products or soaps, etc.
In regard to investment, because you mentioned still willing to invest during the crisis, this is not the first crisis that we're facing. You remember 2007, 2008, the financial crisis. We had Irma in 2017. Essence was always in the market. We were the first one traveling to St. Thomas and St. Martin in October 2017, right after the hurricane. The retailers know that they can count on our support. We've maintained our beauty consultant commission during this crisis. We maintain training, in-store animation, etc. And this is the best way to respond to a crisis, is to continue to invest and to be present. And obviously, the goal is to gain market share.
So a final question for now, with that in mind, how do you see the rest of the year shaping up? And broadly, are you optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we were using the term cautiously optimistic in the past, but I could say we're definitely optimistic. Living here in Miami, we could tell you that the vaccine rollout is quite advanced. In the US, Guillaume mentioned 10% of the population, but there's already 100 million people that have already received their first dose. So, I mean, the rollout in the US is quite strong. Obviously, we depend on the rest of the Americas, where the rollout is not going, as expected. But in terms of the mood, I can tell you that people are definitely eager to travel. I have many friends that are contacted me saying, what are your plans this summer? What are your plans Q4? I see good deals for travel. I think we need to book today while we still have those deals while everybody wakes up and start planning. So in terms of personal trips, we know the interest is there. I mean, nobody's moved around for a year, and people are eager to get to see the destinations, take time off, decompress from the pandemic, see their families, etc. Business travel, I think, will follow a little bit more slowly because people are going to stick to their travel budgets, and people have become accustomed to this video conference life. But I think in the future it will definitely pick back up.
Very good. Well, let's hope that pent-up demand leads to a roaring end to this year and into a brighter 2022. Antoine and Guillaume, many thanks for joining us for this session, and we'll be speaking to you at the Q&A shortly.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon.
So many thanks, Guillaume and Antoine, for that earlier conversation. We'll come back to you and, of course, to William also shortly. But just for now, turning to the vital drinks category and to the experience of Bacardi Global Travel Retail, I'm delighted to welcome Global Head of Marketing, Ignacio Vasquez. Ignacio, welcome. Can you tell us also what's been the broader impact of the crisis on Bacardi Global Travel Retail, impact in the Americas and Caribbean also, and really what measures you've been taking to adapt and react to date?
Yeah, thanks very much. I didn't have a pre-recorded video to introduce what Bacardi is, but I'm sure everyone in the audience knows about Bacardi. But just as a reminder and maybe a quick intro about who we are, we're the world's largest privately owned company with more than 150 years of history. We're family owned for 7 generations. And as a matter of fact, we, the employees within Bacardi, are proud to call ourselves primos, which means in Spanish cousin. So that gives you a sense of what type of culture we have. Our company purpose is to celebrate the moments that matter, one drink at a time. And we really take this philosophy seriously and in everything we do. We have a leading global brand portfolio of more than 200 brands, and that spans across all key categories in spirits. So some of the brands that you may be aware of is, for example, Bombay Sapphire in gin, Grey Goose in vodka, Patron in tequila, Dewar's in whiskeys, Martini in the aperitivo segment, and of course, Bacardi in rums, amongst other. In terms of your question about the impact about the crisis, I mean, obviously for our industry, this has had a humongous impact. As you can imagine, an important part of our revenue comes from what we call HoReCa, which is hotels, restaurants, and cafes. And in that sense, as we've seen the impact as well, we've been very conscious that there is a key sector that is really struggling there. And we've worked a lot in being closer to our community. So we've spent $3 million, for example, in a program called Raise Your Spirits, which is to support bartenders in transforming, into the new reality. We've also, for example, spent a lot of resource in making sure that we have hand sanitizers to help in the stage 1 of COVID. And we continue having a lot of programs to support this heavily damaged part of our business. In terms of global travel retail, I mean, obviously, it's been an incredibly difficult year for us. Spirits, as the other categories, is no exception in the sense that we are directly impacted by the passengers' numbers decline. But I think if there is one thing that plays in our favor in Bacardi is the fact that we're family owned, because that allows us to then don't react in the short term based on the shareholder pressure, but really try to look at the true north and the long-term horizon. So what we see in terms of global travel retail is that we're deeply committed to this channel in the long term. We do believe that this will continue being a strategic channel for us, able to deliver brand experiences, but also become a gateway for consumers to discover our brands, and obviously establish these one-to-one direct conversations, which we'll probably we'll continue talking about throughout the session. In terms of measures, one of the key measures that we took was to not start a cost-cutting exercise with our primos, with our employees, because we do consider that they are a key asset for the company, and we believe in the recovery of the channel. Another key action that we have done is when we look at our retail partners, we have obviously protected the long-term visibility investments that we have with them, but also we've been focusing on planning and preparing for the return, and most especially with those that are really keen and open to partner in the transformation to Omni Channel. In terms of the short-term activation investments, I think at this point in time, we're being extremely agile in redeploying resources in line with the passenger traffic, and we really keep a global scope, and that's the advantage of me sitting in the global role. So in that sense, whether it's in Hainan in China, or looking at, for example, Cancun in Mexico, or maybe in June, July, Heathrow in London, we're really using this downtime to prepare for the return of the new consumer. And obviously, we're really close to the business to make sure that when the opportunity comes, we are ready to activate.
Yeah, and really on that new consumer and transformation, I mean, what dynamics do you think will return us to growth, and what does recovery look like to you at this point? And is it a very different normal and normality to the one that we've lived in before?
Well, I think one of the first dynamic will be obviously the volume of passengers, and that's a variable that maybe we cannot control directly at the moment now. But the good news is that when you, for example, look at Google Trends and see what's happening in there, the number of searches that are growing month by month and week by week, especially in places where the opening is in the near future, is phenomenal. So I think the consumers are ready, and the moment that we start normalizing traveling again through the vaccine passports, the penetration of vaccine and other measures, we will definitely see that surge coming again. Outside of what we cannot control, which is the volume variable, I think there are a number of elements that we can control, and one of them, for example, is, and I think that they spoke about it in the previous session, is how can we increase the shopper penetration? And for us, this means basically growing our footfall and clickful to the physical and digital store ahead of the passenger growth numbers. And there is no magic in this. I think it's as simple as basically start connecting with the travelers beyond the physical store in the pre-journey stage, but then also continuing during their journey and also in the post-journey. And that means basically gravitating from a traditional physical retail model, where statistically almost, I think it was 40%, the famous statistic that we use is the traffic that goes into store, to basically, and addressing that 40%, to moving into an omni-channel model where basically your target becomes the entire population of travelers, right? So in that sense, the opportunities to then convert those consumers are much higher. And I think the third variable is obviously drive conversion and average ticket value. And the only way to do this is really delivering the right value propositions and brand experiences, you know. So I think it, again, was mentioned in the previous session, but I think for us, for example, knowing your consumer is going to be critical, because those value propositions will need to resonate. And some examples of what it means for us, for example, in this period of time, what has been happening in the luxury spirits is very interesting, because there's been a boom in the home cocktail making. So the on-trade, which is how we call the restaurants and bars, has now become the home trade. And that means that consumers go to, you know, to domestic retail, buy their drinks and their ingredients, and then start making those cocktails, you know. So lockdown has actually sparked a whole new world of discovery and experimentation in eating and drinking at home, and actually in the use of new ingredients. And now our homes have become the focal point of our social lives, but also, you know, that element of experimentation is happening there as well. So in that sense, we need to then understand how in the new era of traveling, we can actually continue that, encouraging that behavior by having propositions that are resonating with consumers. The other element that I think is going to come very clearly is the health consciousness. And in that sense, what we will see, and we already start seeing before COVID, is that there was a culture of drinking less but drinking better. So we will see an element of premiumization accelerating probably, because consumers will want to continue drinking very good products, but also obviously drinking it in a more healthy way, you know. And in that sense, we will also see a rise of what we call the no-low, which is basically no alcohol or low alcohol category drinks. And lastly, for us as well, it's really interesting to think about sustainability and caring for the planet in a way. So all that has to do with this area will be as well something that we'll be looking very much in depth in the coming months to start coming up with really interesting propositions for consumers.
Yeah, William, to turn to you, you touched on some of those points as well. I noted you talking about confectionery and that the category will remain strong, but that the occasions on which shoppers choose to buy will change, the occasions and motivations, which Ignacio has also touched on. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on how you see that moving forward and how we should be planning for a different type of consumer.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I you know, agree with what Ignacio just said. Right, as we think about, you know, during the recovery, the key occasions, people are, I think some of this at-home experimentation, at-home eating is going to linger. I mean, there is pent-up demand to go out to eat, to drink, but I do think people have learned, wow, I can have fun with my family cooking or eating or making new cocktails together. Right. And so that's kind of thing is going to continue. So as we think about our portfolio, it's what are those pieces that can enable that, right? And that could even be, you know, one of the things we have, I mentioned in the pre-recorded presentation, our baking portfolio, right? We don't have a big baking business in travel retail, but as we think, you know, travelers are thinking about cooking and baking more often, I mean, that's an area of the portfolio that we have to look to, right? You know, as we think to maybe the in travel, on plane food preparations changing. You know, maybe Skinny Pop popcorn is an example where we can get a travel retailer to purchase that for an occasion on the plane, right? So I really think we have to say, as the consumer makes the journey from too afraid to travel to starting to travel to keeping some of those behaviors as they move forward, we have to, you know, keep innovating, keep adapting our portfolio and adapting the shelf to meet that need.
Yeah, I'll put that similar question to Antoine and Guillaume as well. Beauty, a different category, of course, but do you see purchasing occasions or motivations changing in your world as well? And how might you need with your partners to react and adapt?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with William and Ignacio, of course. I mean, the world is changing and people are adapting to new ways, but I do believe that it will go back to a little bit what it was for the beauty industry. You know, in terms of fragrances, it's pretty simple. I mean, you have these top 20 brands, and people are very familiar with buying them, and it just, you know, you have a beauty consultant in the store that has information on the goods and is able to provide an easy way to sample. So I don't really see a huge change. You know, a culture change within the consumer in the store. How about you, Via?
Yeah, I agree. I flew 2 weeks ago to Punta Cana. It was good to be back to the Caribbean and be back on traveling. And William's presentation was very interesting. And I've noticed that in your presentation, some data coming from Mindset said that I believe 64% of travelers are probably less likely to be waiting on an airport, if I remember well. Well, in Punta Cana 2 weeks ago, the airport was full. We have nothing to do but to waiting for the plane. People were eating, shopping, and hopefully for DFA, who has a concession at the airport of Punta Cana, they had a good day that day. I mean, I saw people buying, and I saw people happy to be finally outside their home.
Yeah, and just on a related question of that engagement and something we touched on in the previous session, how we get from where we are now broadly across the world to that one-to-one and personalized touch with those consumers. I don't know if you saw it in Punta Cana, Guillaume, but what the situation is with tastings and that personalization that this industry has been so good at, and where we can evolve to next in with the business and react to the situation that we're in, because clearly domestic market have done that very well and are already back doing testers and tastings. You know, we're a long way away from that still.
Absolutely.
William, just on that subject as well, obviously tastings play a role in what Hershey does. Where do you see that moving to in terms of that one-to-one engagement and ability to touch the hearts and minds and wallets of the consumer in the airports?
Yeah, I think that engagement is absolutely critical in our category, as I mentioned. And you know, right now it's obviously depressed significantly. But I think what we're hearing from consumers is they want that experience, they want the engagement, but they need to have it in what is actually in practice safe, and then what actually feels safe to them as well. Right. So I think it is good. People are starting to gather more and travel more, but you still see in terms of what consumers are looking for, it's things like social distancing, it's things like hand sanitizer. And so we need to work with our retailers to make sure we can deliver those samples in such a way that the consumer feels safe, but also gets, you know, attraction to our brand. And I think, you know, even if I take an analogy to the US domestic channel, you know, Costco is a mass retailer who people are probably familiar with. Sampling was a huge part of their business, especially for new brands there. And I think they're still just trying to figure out how to do it. So right now they make the sample, they cook the food, and it sits behind glass and you can't eat it or touch it. So I think it's how do we get the experience that's going to be, you know, enough to push the consumer to purchase, but also feel safe in doing it.
Yeah, Ignacio, clearly that's a big part of the wines and spirits proposition. We've again got quite a way to go, and I know it was a question that was put to the retailers in the last session, but you know, I'm sure you're working with some of them on propositions to get back to where we were. How do you see that recovery in terms of the one-to-one engagement, personalized engagement coming along?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, of course, the sampling as well is critical, as you perfectly know, and we have a word for it, which is liquid on lips. I think we probably, in the short term, for sure, we will have challenges with that element, but I think in the medium long term, this will vanish. We will continue going back to normality, and in that sense, you know, the element of physicality will be there. One thing that I think probably we should all think about is how can we change paradigms? You know, I think we need to start moving from a physical relation with the shopper and the consumer to an emotional relationship based on services and added value. And I think in that sense, if we embrace, you know, the consumer and the consumer behavior, and we know who they are, revenue will follow. You know, that's absolutely clear. So as much as you know, in the sort of short term, this will be a problem. I think over time, if we do our job well, I don't think there will be that much of an issue in terms of whether there's going to be an element of sampling or no sampling. You know, but again, I'm confident that in the medium short term, we will have this element coming as well back to our repertoire, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Just a question to touch back on the great retailer conversation we had previously, and thinking about that, where we discussed the rationalization of the brand offer, but where each of them still expect quite a lot, including high levels of innovation from their brand partners. How do we square that circle from a brand owner investment viewpoint, William?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dermot. And I think to some degree, like a lot of these factors, it's a pacing conversation, right? Because I think similar to Essence, we've found the benefit to, in the short term, really focusing on our blockbuster brands and our blockbuster SKUs. So we've streamlined our portfolio, quite significantly over the past year. And that not only, makes it simple at retail, but it makes it for supply chain efficiencies, for, better forecasting accuracy, et cetera. But I do think, innovation is a critical part of the category, especially in confectionery. And we've got a great lineup ready, both US-based innovation. So we have a Reese's peanut butter cup with pretzels. We have a US Hershey with ice cream shop flavors. I mentioned Skinny Pop in terms of, looking at adjacent categories. So I think it's when the recovery is there, going to work with our retailers to work that innovation platform concept in. But I do think, for a period of time, we're going to see a somewhat more streamlined portfolio because, it's working with consumers, right? And even in the variety seeking category, we're finding that our big brands and our power SKUs are working well. So I think it's going to be a journey, and it's going to be require partnership between brands and retailers.
Yeah. Antoine and Guillaume, from the point of view of the brand owners that you represent, do you see their appetite to invest in differentiation or the channel changing at all? As I say, just thinking about that conversation where the brand offer has been very much rationalized. We discussed it in the pre-record that we did, but they still expect a high level of innovation and investment from their brand partners. Is there a circle to be squared there with the brand owners versus the retailers?
Yeah, I mean, maybe then you can join in. Last year, the message was very clear from all the brands, halt all your investments, push everything to 2021. But now, the direction that we've heard from our brands and us, when we're crunching our P&L, is there is opportunities to invest. Not at the level of 2019, but obviously our sales need to recover to those 2019 levels to be able to have those major investments. But we are definitely looking to invest. Guillaume mentioned earlier our beauty consultants. We've kept our beauty consultants. Some were furloughed, but that was the decision of the operator. But we've kept the majority of the staff there, and we do have some HVPs, which are our promotions in store planned this year, starting second semester, which are already booked with our retailers.
Yeah, and the Caribbean has obviously suffered last year. Minus the CTO shared the figures, minus 65% tourists compared to 19. Cruise ship was a pure fall down with minus 70%. I mean, I really want to put 2020 behind us. I mean, 2021 is a new start again. The Caribbean is in between travel retail and locals. A lot of locals still consume and don't travel abroad. So yes, we need to invest. We need to support our retailer. We need to continue helping them to build their online platform and maybe invest more in social media than in the old school other marketing platform. But it's time to continue. Yeah.
Yeah, Ignacio, clearly Bacardi's been investing. We've seen quite a lot of that, and most recently, for instance, in Hainan. I know it's not America's, but the Jewelers boutique there, very interesting, and that's going after clearly a market where there is travel and some spend overall. Is that how you're assessing that appetite for investment at Bacardi Global Travel Retail? And I guess again that question around investing before the upturn comes and to catch it as it continues.
Yeah, I think as we said before, and I think for me this is really important. Innovation is not only related to the physical product, is also to the service offering that we're delivering to the consumer to surprise and delight them, right? And in that sense, I think the new consumer that we're going to see coming back is going to be a very different breed. In that sense, it's going to be a more demanding than ever consumed, probably much well informed and connected, and that's mostly driven to the e-commerce penetration at domestic. That implies basically that these guys will almost be doctors in e-commerce from a sort of user perspective, and in that sense they will be quite demanding. I would say probably in three main elements, and that will be speed, customization, and comfort, from the convenience side. Also, I think what is going to be very interesting and probably shaping as well our innovation agenda in terms of experiences and propositions is, as we see the e-commerce penetration in domestic becoming higher, obviously, the comparison in terms of products and prices will no longer be as much based on the high street as it will be probably on the e-commerce players versus global travel retail. And there, just from a pure sort of pricing differential, sometimes there will be some challenges, right? So, and that will force us in global travel retail to really work on differentiation in terms of value propositions, but also in terms of experiences in store, because you will still have this captive audience of consumers that are waiting for their journeys to happen with this element of discovery and looking to be surprised, So you have basically all the capabilities to create a unique shopping environment that linked to those value propositions can really drive conversion. And maybe the last point that I think will be interesting as well in terms of creating value propositions is what we see as this increasing demand on social responsibility and environmentally friendly solutions, and I don't think it will be probably the unique selling point for many brands, but I can definitely say that if you think about brands that do versus say, I think those brands that do will have a place in the consideration set for consumers. There will be almost like a hygiene factor in terms of which brands I should consider. Simple things like, for example, last week we came up with the latest announcement on Bombay Sapphire, which is our iconic premium gin, and this will be one of the first major brands that will be made 100% of sustainability sourced botanicals. This type of things, even though may not lead to converting on this brand specifically, will take you to consider this brand, and reworking the existing propositions in a way that are helping to that new world, I think will be important as well.
Yeah, you each talked in different ways about relationships, and in the last session I asked the retailers what their message was to the brand owner community out there. I suppose perhaps for each of you, what's your message to other stakeholders, but notably the retailers and perhaps airports in particular, about the longer term picture and what you expect perhaps from them to create a more sustainable, profitable ecosystem for all? Perhaps William? I think you're muted there.
Yeah, and I did a little gimmick to change my background temporarily because I wanted to highlight a particular partnership that we have done in Changi in Singapore. And this was a joint investment with the airport, the retailer, and Hershey to make a really, to Ignacio's point on innovation is more than just product, right? Really an experience with you can see that candy machine in the background, which over delivered on our demand by 5x overall and over 10x this past Easter weekend. And so I think going forward, if we can get a more, and it's easy to say, right, but not easy to do. If the airports, the retailers, and the brands can partner more together, as we jointly get through this recovery and then jointly benefit from the bounce back, it's going to be a better situation for all of us. So I think we at Hershey are encouraged by the partnership opportunities going forward, and look to our retail partners and airport partners for that as well.
Antoine and Guillaume, what are you looking for from those retailers and airport partners to deliver as we enter hopefully the recovery phase over the coming months and year ahead?
Yeah, I mean, we're all in this together. So, I mean, we've seen some airports or governments be supportive, and the U.S. is definitely a supportive government towards the transportation industry. But we're all in it together. So, I mean, we need the airports to support the retailers. We need the retailers to support the brands. We spoke about promotions. Of course, we're ready to invest, but we need also the retailers to, have purchases to support some of those purchases, or maybe to adjust some of their fees. But they can only do that if the airports do it. And then us as brands, of course, we need to invest with the retailers. We need to be present. We need to help with their inventory. I mean, we're all in the same boat. So we have to work together and just know that, this too will pass. And I think looking at medium term, things are definitely looking optimistic. I mean, we've celebrated 1 year in a pandemic in March. I mean, we're in a much better place today in April than we were last year. I mean, this is when we were all scratching our heads, crunching, different cash flows, and maybe our 1 millionth P&L, not knowing where this year is going to go. And I think now we just have a clearer vision. It's going to take time, but we know where we're going and we see light at the end of the tunnel.
For sure. Ignacio, your message to those other stakeholders, and indeed beyond that, do you think that the dynamics between airport retailer brand owner are going to change significantly as we move ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of some thoughts or messages, well, for me, this is really the evolution theory put in practice, in the sense that those who are adapting better to the new environment will survive, and those who are not able to adapt will fade and eventually die. And that's tough to say, but that's really the reality of disruption, right? And that's regardless of size or scale, So in that sense, this has become a level playing field where there is real room for cooperation and partnerships, and not the traditional buyer-supplier relationship. And I think that's a really important factor that I can see already happening with some of our key partners on the retail side, as well as in the aviation. The other point, I think, is since the channel has been disrupted, I think those of us who thrive in the uncertainty will really enjoy this, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to redesign a traditional channel and turn it into a world-class omni-channel shopper experience. So in that sense, I think the call would be, let's all embrace change and really run towards making it happen. And I guess the other point maybe is because we're facing something completely different. I've got in my mind this cover of this book that is called "What Got You Here Will Not Take You There," or you have this guy on some stairs, and then there's another stairs on the other side where he cannot reach out to the second level to go higher. We need to rethink the way that we're organized, but also the way that we collaborate with our stakeholders, and even the way we define and engage our shoppers. I think this is really about redesigning our services and product offering around real consumer and shopper needs, and designing this joint growth agenda with our business partners. So it's a fantastic opportunity. And the last point maybe is, as part of this working together, I think we need to think about how can we start working in the agile mode much more, in terms of maybe reducing the lead times on some of the things we do, testing A/B content. The moment that we're pivoting into digital, we don't have anymore the constraints of the physical space. We can activate a campaign in 2 minutes and take it out of the broadcasting in 2 minutes as well, or we can make it 30 minutes or for 5 months. Whereas in the old days, you would have to wait until everything was set up in the physical store. That ability is now there, and we need to leverage it to the full, in terms of enhancing the value propositions of the products, in addition to the physical element to it. Every single product today can tell you a little bit about their story and bring you to an experience. And no better benchmark of this of what we're seeing now, for example, in China, which is the most sophisticated digital ecosystem in the world, So I think there are a number of really interesting experiences that we can work together, but they will require real cooperation, agility, and the vision of designing this together. I think those will be my key messages.
Very good. Yeah, agility and flexibility, and I think transformation is a word we've heard quite a lot today, which is interesting at a time of downturn for the industry. And I think that's an upbeat message that we've managed to carry throughout the 3 sessions we've had today, concluding with this one. We're just heading for the hour mark, so we'll wrap it up there. But I want to, before that, thank William, Ignacio, and of course Antoine and Guillaume for their candid comments on their time as well today. A reminder that all our sessions will be available on demand shortly, so if you've missed any, you can look them up, and of course you can do the same over the 30-day encore period that we have after the week finishes. We'll welcome you all back to the Knowledge Hub at 0900, that's US Eastern Time, tomorrow, where we'll begin with what I can promise will be a really engaging CEO chair session with Sean Donoghue, who's Chief Executive of Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. Really good conversation that I had with him recently. Please enjoy the rest of the day in the Exhibition Hub. I know many of you will be heading back for that. Thanks again to all our speakers for today, and we'll see you again tomorrow. So thank you and good day.